Welcome to AI Paper Podcasts. Today we're tackling a really big question, one that's probably on a lot of people's minds. Does generative AI actually, work for academic research? Does it make researchers genuinely more productive? And maybe even more importantly, does it improve the quality of their work? We're diving into a paper from October 2025, Can GenAI Improve Academic Performance? By Filimonovic, Rutzer, and Wunsch. They used author-level data, tracking individual researchers over time, specifically in the social and behavioral sciences, right after ChatGPT really took off in late 2022.
And yeah, the findings are quite striking. Let's hit the key takeaways right up front. First, the productivity gains. They're significant. Compared to researchers who didn't seem to adopt GenAI, the users saw their publication output jump by about 15% in 2023. And then, as people got more used to the tools, that number climbed even higher, hitting a 36% increase in 2024.
36%, that's a huge boost in output. But the immediate question is, was it just more papers or better papers? What about quality?
That's the crucial bit, isn't it? They found moderate gains in quality, too. Using journal impact scores specifically, fixed ones, we'll get into why that matters, quality went up by about 1.3% in 2023, and then 2.0% in 2024. So output soared, and quality actually nudged upwards.
Okay, interesting. So it's not just churning out lower quality stuff faster. Who benefited most from this tech?
Well, the impact wasn't uniform. The study found the biggest boosts for a few specific groups. Early career researchers, for one. Also, those in fields they classed as more technically complex, like economics and psychology. And maybe the most striking finding, researchers from non-English speaking countries.
The distant English speakers, as they termed them.
Exactly. So the big picture takeaway really seems to be that GenAI might be helping to lower some existing barriers in research, making things a bit more inclusive, perhaps.
A potential leveler. Okay, let's unpack how they got there. The data, the methods. It sounds complex.
It is, yeah. Let's set the scene first. GenAI adoption, especially ChatGPT, was incredibly fast, right? We know scientists started using it for all sorts of things, writing help, coding, even brainstorming.
Right, it was everywhere almost overnight. And some earlier studies tried to look at the impact. You mentioned Hao and Tang, but you said this study is different.
Yeah, those earlier studies were useful, but often they were looking at snapshots in time or struggled to really isolate the effect of GenAI itself. Like, maybe people who jumped on GenAI early were already more productive, Yeah. That's selection bias.
Okay, so how did this study get around that?
They used a panel data approach. That means they tracked the same researchers over time, before and after ChatGPT became widely available. This lets them look at within-author changes, which is much better for figuring out causality.
And they focused on social sciences and psychology, economics, sociology, psych. Why those fields specifically?
It seems like a smart choice. These fields all look at society, broadly speaking, but they use really different methods. You've got very quantitative, model-heavy stuff in economics, and then more qualitative, language-focused work in sociology.
So it lets them test if GenAI helps across different kinds of research tasks, not just writing.
Exactly. Is it just a fancy spell checker, or does it help with the technical side too? The data itself came from Scopus, covering peer-reviewed articles from 2021 right through to 2024.
Okay, and the key things they measured. Productivity was just the number of papers published, straightforward enough. But the quality metric, the Esimago Journal Rank, SJR, tell us a bit more about that. Why SJR, and why fix it at 2019 levels?
Right, so SJR is like an impact factor, but it considers the prestige of the journal citing the work. A citation from Nature counts more than one from a less prominent journal. It's a common way to gauge influence.
Makes sense. But why fix the values back in 2019? Journals get better or worse, right?
Precisely. If a journal's SJR score goes up between 2021 and 2024, and an author publishes there more, is it because the author got better or the journal just got more prestigious? Or maybe authors just started targeting journals whose metrics were rising.
Okay. So fixing the SJR values isolates the author's apparent shift in publication quality. If their average fixed SJR goes up, it means they're getting into journals that were considered better back in 2019. It removes the noise from shifting journal prestige.
Exactly. It's a neat technical trick to keep the measurement stable and focused on the author's performance change relative to a constant benchmark. They also tracked career age years since first publication and inferred gender using an algorithm based on names.
All right, let's get to the trickiest part, identifying the adopters. If people don't usually put written with ChatGPT in their acknowledgments, how on earth did they figure out who was using it? This sounds fascinating, especially for our audience working with language models.
Yeah, this is where it gets really clever, I think. They treated the launch of ChatGPT in late 2022 as sort of a natural experiment. And they identified potential adoption by looking for specific linguistic markers, keywords in the titles and abstracts of papers.
Keywords associated with GenAI output, like what?
Things like delve, intricate, meticulous, showcase, underscore, unveil, pivotal. Words that tend to appear more frequently in AI-generated text, often sounding a bit more formal or, well, sometimes a bit over the top.
Okay, but hold on. Couldn't good writers, or maybe just slightly more verbose writers, have used those words before ChatGPT? How did they avoid just flagging people with a certain writing style? That seems like a major potential confounder.
Absolutely critical point, and that's where their filtering method comes in. They started with a list of about 65 potential keywords, but then they applied a really strict rule. They only kept keywords if their usage frequency across all papers in the dataset increased by at least 200% between 2022 and 2024.
A 200% jump. Wow. Okay, so they're looking for words that didn't just exist, but suddenly became massively more common right after ChatGPT launched. That's the signal.
That's the signal, exactly. It filters out words that were just generally common before. And then defining a user wasn't just about using these words, it was about the change in usage for a specific author.
Ah, the within author change again.
Right. An author was flagged as a GenAI user if their share of these specific filtered keywords in their titles and abstracts increased in the 2023-2024 period compared to their own baseline share in 2021-2022.
So someone who always used pivotal wouldn't be flagged, but someone who suddenly started using pivotal, delve, and underscore after late 2022 would be...
Precisely. It focuses on the shift in linguistic patterns coinciding with the availability of the tool. It's a proxy, of course, but a pretty clever one based on observable behavior.
As someone working with LLMs, I'm curious, where did that initial list of 65 keywords come from? Did they ask an LLM, or was it based on prior linguistic analysis comparing human and AI text?
That's a great meta question. The paper points towards leveraging existing linguistic research that had already started identifying stylistic tells of early GenAI models, things related to formality, complexity, certain preferred adjectives that just started popping up everywhere. So they used NLP insights to build their measurement tool.
Okay, methodology makes sense for identification.
Yeah.
Now the comparison. You mentioned earlier that adopters might just be different kinds of researchers. How did they create a fair control group? They used difference in differences, DID combined with matching. Can you unpack that a bit for our technical listener?
So DID is the core idea. You compare the change in outcome, like publications for the user group, before and after the treatment, ChatGPT launch, to the change in outcome for the non-user group over the same period.
The non-user change gives you the baseline trend, what might have happened anyway.
Exactly. It helps control for general trends affecting everyone. But DID relies on a key assumption that both groups were on similar trends before the treatment. The parallel trends assumption.
And that might not hold if users and non-users were fundamentally different to begin with.
Right. That's where propensity score matching, PSM, comes in. Before doing the DD, they matched each user with several non-users who looked very similar based on pre-treatment characteristics.
Like what characteristic?
Things measured before late 2022. Their publication count in 2021-2022, their average impact factor then, career age, gender, their main field, and crucially, whether they were based in a native English-speaking country or not. They used a 3.1 match, 3 similar non-users for every user.
So they build a control group that's statistically almost identical to the user group right up until the moment ChatGPT arrived.
Yeah.
Then they apply the D to compare their trajectories afterwards.
That's the idea. Combining TSM with DD makes the claim of a causal effect much stronger because you've actively constructed a comparable control group and accounted for pre-existing trends.
Okay, so did the parallel trends assumption hold up after matching? Did the groups look like they were on similar paths before late 2022?
Yes, they explicitly checked for that. The analysis showed no statistically significant evidence of different pre-trends in either productivity or quality for the matched groups before the intervention period. That gives confidence in the DD results.
Good. So let's revisit those main results now with the methodology in mind, the productivity jump. Remind us again.
Yeah, the cumulative effect. A 15% relative increase in papers published in 2023 for users compared to matched non-users, and that accelerated to 36% in 2024.
That acceleration is interesting. It suggests maybe a learning curve with the tools, or maybe just a natural lag in the publication process.
Probably a mix of both. It takes time to integrate these tools effectively, and it takes time for a paper started in early 2023 to actually get through peer review and appear in print by 2024. Both factors likely contribute to that growing effect size.
And the quality finding. Positive but smaller gains.
Correct. A 1.3% increase in the average fixed SJR score in 2023, rising to 2.0% in 2024. Statistically significant, suggesting it's not just random noise, but definitely more modest than the huge productivity leap.
Still, important that it didn't go down. There was a worry, I think, that faster output might mean cutting corners.
Exactly. Within the limits of this measurement focusing on journal prestige, it doesn't look like users were just flooding lower-tier venues. They seem to be getting more work into journals of at least similar or slightly better quality than before.
Okay, this brings us to the really interesting part for me, the heterogeneity. Who got the biggest boost? You said it wasn't evenly spread. This is where those equity implications start to surface.
Definitely. They broke down the effects across several dimensions. Let's start with linguistic proximity. This was maybe the clearest result.
The distant English speakers versus native English speakers.
Right. Researchers based in countries like China, Japan, South Korea saw significantly larger gains in both productivity and quality compared to native English speakers.
Which makes intuitive sense, right? If writing and polishing prose in English is a major hurdle, GenAI acts like a powerful, instantly available editor and writing assistant. It reduces that specific friction point.
Precisely. It seems to directly alleviate a major cognitive and practical burden for a huge portion of the global research community. It's a powerful argument for GenAI as an inclusivity tool there.
What about the field differences? You said more technical fields saw bigger gains.
Yeah, field technicality. They grouped economics and psychology as higher technical fields, often relying more on formal modeling, complex stats, maybe computational methods. Sociology was grouped as lower technical. The gains were more pronounced in those higher technical fields.
That is interesting, because it suggests the tool isn't just helping with the final writing stage. It might be helping formulate complex arguments, describe methods, maybe even assist with coding or statistical interpretation for those fields.
That's a strong possibility. It hints that the utility goes beyond just surface-level text generation into assisting with the communication of more complex technical content.
Okay, and career stage. Early career versus senior researchers.
Career stage. Early career researchers defined as 7 years or less since their first publication saw slightly larger productivity gains compared to more senior scholars, roughly 38% versus 33% increase in 2024.
Why might that be? Maybe younger researchers are quicker to adopt new tech? Or perhaps they have less established support.
Could be both. Younger scholars might have fewer resources like grant-funded research assistants or established co-author networks, so GenAI provides a bigger marginal benefit, filling a resource gap. Plus, maybe they are just more digitally native and integrated it faster.
And finally, gender. Any differences there? This is always a concern with new tools potentially amplifying existing biases.
This was a key finding, actually. They looked at gender differences and found comparable gains in both productivity and quality for male and female researchers.
So, at least in this initial 2-year period, the tool doesn't seem to be widening the gender gap in publication output in these fields.
That's what the data suggests. It seems to be benefiting both groups relatively equally, which is, a positive sign from an equity perspective.
Okay, so strong main effects, fascinating heterogeneity, but with a novel method like the keyword identification, robustness checks are crucial. How did they try to poke holes in their own findings?
They did several important checks. First, back to those keyword thresholds. Remember, they used a 200% frequency increase to filter keywords. They reran the analysis using a lower threshold, 100%, and a much higher one, 500%.
And the main results held?
Yep. The size and significance of the productivity and quality effects remained pretty stable across those different thresholds. It suggests the finding isn't just an artifact of that specific 200% cutoff.
What about the definition of a user? Just any increase in keyword share seems broad. Did they check if people who showed a bigger increase had bigger effects?
Good question. They tested stricter user classification definitions. They reran the models, limiting the user group to only those authors who are in the top percentiles of keyword share increase, like above the 95th percentile, 90th, 85th.
Did that show a dose response, like more keyword usage equals bigger impact?
Interestingly, no. While the positive effects remained significant even for these high-intensity groups, they didn't find a clear monotonic relationship. It wasn't like the 95th percentile group had dramatically larger effects than the 90th or the overall user group.
What does that imply?
It might suggest that the keyword method, while good for identifying adoption, might be less precise at measuring the intensity of use, or at least the intensity that drives productivity. Maybe researchers are using GenAI heavily in ways that don't leave those specific keyword traces, like for coding, background research, or just outlining.
Fair enough. The proxy has its limits. Did they check the matching?
Yes, matching ratios. They initially used a 1-to-3 match, one user to 3 non-users. They redid the analysis using 1-to-1 and 1-to-2 matching as well. The findings were consistent. That boosts confidence that the way they constructed the control group was sound and didn't unduly influence the results.
Okay, sounds quite thorough.
Oh.
But every study has limitations. What did the authors themselves point out as the main caveats here?
They highlighted 3 key ones. First, as we just discussed, the keyword method isn't perfect. It likely misses GenAI use for tasks like idea generation or coding assistance that don't show up in the final text's keywords. So the true effect might even be underestimated.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, the study is focused only on the social and behavioral sciences. How GenAI impacts, say, physicists or chemists might be quite different. So generalizability to STEM fields is limited for now.
And the third.
And this is maybe the biggest one for the future. These are short-term effects, looking just 2 years post-launch. We have no idea yet about the long-term equilibrium. How will peer review standards change? Will journals start expecting GenAI polish? Will the novelty bar rise? Those are open questions.
Big open questions indeed. So, wrapping up, the immediate policy takeaway seems pretty clear, doesn't it? If the tool boosts productivity and helps non-native English speakers so much.
Yeah, the implication is that ensuring broad, equitable access to high-quality GenAI tools could be a really effective policy lever, especially focusing on resource-constrained institutions or researchers in non-English speaking environments where the study shows that the benefits are potentially largest.
It gives solid empirical backing to the idea that this tech can be a democratizing force in science, at least initially, without necessarily tanking quality.
Exactly. It helps level the playing field on certain dimensions.
So, for you listening, maybe you're a researcher yourself, or you're building these AI tools. What's the bottom line? This research suggests GenAI is already acting as a powerful accelerator, especially for those who face certain systemic hurdles before, like language barriers or fewer early career resources. Productivity goes up significantly, quality holds or slightly improves. And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over. If GenAI continues to get better, and potentially, as some research suggests, leads to a convergence where everyone's writing becomes polished and clear, what happens then? How will top journals evaluate papers if linguistic style and clarity become less of a differentiator? Does the focus have to shift almost entirely to the raw novelty of the idea, the rigor of the method, the fundamental insight, stripped bare of its linguistic packaging? We might be on the cusp of a real shift in what excellence means in academic publishing.